I'd like to introduce Beetle Bum, which was one of the first things we recorded for the Blur album.
I'll pick She's So High. I remember we threw all these instruments at this song. I learnt the whole middle section backwards so I could have some psychedelic guitars on it.
I'll pick To the End because it's the one song where I get to fulfil my Scott Walker fantasies.
I will pick Girls and Boys, I think, because I'm barely on it. It's cool not being on your record.
There's a lot of that goes on.
It's kind of really like your mum getting out an old photograph album, isn't it? Showing it to your girlfriend.
Yeah, thankfully it doesn't sort of go back that far to sort of nappies. But almost. I mean, we started quite young. And we've made a lot of mistakes and we've stumbled on a lot of successes. Well, growing up in public, or you could look at it like a learning in public, a very public course, college course, whatever. I think it's weird when you're faced with what is essentially a full stop or the end of a paragraph in your life, which is the greatest hits when when you've been in a band. And I think it's I don't know how many chapters of our being it is, but definitely there's a lot more to come. So it doesn't feel like we're signing off in any way. In fact, it feels like we're sort of just filing everything and sort of moving to new premises. And I can't, something that I wrote in 1989 or 94 is so different to what I'm doing now. The way my confidence, the way I sing, how I feel, everything is different. But at the same time, I'm not sort of ashamed of anything.
It's odd, really, how anti we've been to the whole greatest hits idea, but then just suddenly the time seemed right. It is like drawing a line under what we've done. But it's kind of when you draw lines under things, it's to stop people adding anything else on the end, isn't it?
That is the best way to sign off this episode of our life. Leave it with something that says, "Look, next time we come back, it will either be like this or even better." So don't write us off, kids, because there is a sense when you do a great hits that they have historically they become hopefully the most. They become very popular, successful records because they encapsulate, all of those different periods. And even Noel Gallagher once quoted that he'd buy a Blur greatest hits. I feel like status quo.
Self-inflicted kind of award, isn't it? Or a contractually self-inflicted award. I think we've reached a time in our career where we can no longer avoid it. More than actually really want to do it, isn't it?
Yeah, well, CDs aren't long. We wanted to put more on. You can only get 72 minutes of music on a CD, we found out. But we've made 20, how many singles? 23, 24?
No.
Box sets are kind of odd, aren't they? Sort of, I don't know who buys them, really. I've got a few box sets.
It's more like a manicure set. Manicure case box set.
But EMI did some market research, which was absolutely fascinating.
Yeah.
Quite brutal. But so they just sort of did some investigations as to what people's idea of the ultimate Blur album. And this is directly as a result of that, really.
It was strange, because they were all the ones that sort of make me squirm. That they like.
We always sound tougher than I remember. And particularly the first album, it was really quite hard. Well, I guess it was a kind of marketing man's dream, really, because it kind of hit all the groups that record companies are looking to appeal to. I know it worked on a lot of levels. Very simple. Food Records have been trying to get us to put that drum beat on everything we do.
That's when we fully developed the yin and yang that is Coxon and James, where our kind of contrariness to each other musically kind of reached you know, it was nothing at all personal. Actually, it's one of Blur's strengths, I think, that he was doing his funk, and I was doing completely trying to be contrary to his funk. He was wanting to be in Joan Joan, I was wanting to be in Gang of Four, and that's how it. And it does sound a bit like Gang of Four. So I mean, that's sort of when it kind of the first time that sort of thing came about. Really, we sort of knew that it was kind of interesting. If we do something that seems quite new to us, I think we're very unsure a lot of the times to actually what we've created and what it means. It takes us a while, or takes other people's reactions to it, to make us understand that maybe we've done something in a little way revolutionary for ourselves.
Those kind of tracks, it's odd because you can just listen to them like music rather than have to get completely emotionally entangled in them and never be able to hear them properly. So all there is a couple of cymbals on there from me, but I can hear it like a non-member of Blur. Those kind of things, and watching Graham and Damon on stage doing acoustic gigs are some of the best things to do when you're in Blur, really. It's kind of, you know, it's cool, you know. It's cool not being on your records.
Weren't you in the shouty bit?
I was, yeah, I suppose I am actually. I'm on it more than I think actually, aren't I? There's some cymbals and some shouting. That's probably my vocal debut though, probably.
Yeah. It's funny, sort of looking back over. I mean, obviously that most of the tracks on a best of are going to be singles, what people are familiar with. I mean, I think so. What I listen to is singles. I very rarely listen to albums. Yeah, I'm you know, we're proud of each and every one of these songs. You know, I know I am totally. There's no other way. You know, it's just. I mean, that was the first time we really got it right. You know, something clicked into place. It was the first thing we did with Stephen Street, who kind of walked in out of the blue at a point when things could have gone badly wrong. Really, we'd done one single that had got to sort of just miss the charts, and we'd gone back in with that producer to make another record, and it just hadn't worked at all. And then Stephen appeared with his funky dotted drum loops.
Well, it's always difficult to talk about that one because I really can't remember exactly. You know, it was over with so quickly, and I didn't sort of ever really finish the lyrics. It had that I just went with how I did it first time. You know, I slightly adapted it, but not really. You know, and it's always something I fight against. You know, and I'm really happy sometimes when I manage to have the confidence to just let it go and leave it at that level, because of, you know, I think I just find it a very exciting way of working when you don't really know what you're saying. You just, you know, it's much more primal in that, obviously, and that is a very I don't know, that song just keeps going and going and going.
It was we just really had to take ourselves somewhere else. You know, the furrow that we'd been ploughing had really completely run its course, and you know, I think people were expecting us, or sort of. It was like a success in America was something that you had to achieve. It was like
that was the big pressure. I think the big pressure and the sort of. There's always a pressure. I've always found pressure in this group, because we started ourselves as quite a thinking sort of pop group, really, and it was quite a relief to record things like Song 2 and actually have them as singles, because it's just actually an expression of just sort of breaking free from that pseudo-intellectual BS, just using your own energy as the thing and not your brain. We thought that everyone would love them, and we were just excited about creating this energy, and we really wanted to play it. I suppose because of what I said before, it's a great release to play something like that live, because it's not that hard to play. You're just relying on your mood, really, and nothing else.
The Tender's got a very traditional structure, like a hymn-like thing, so it probably it is very conventional in ultimately, but yeah, compared to what is on you know, what is current. I suppose it's different from that.
It's a bit more Levi's than a lot of the charts thing, which is a bit like cyberware, isn't it? It's like a fresh of old-fashioned.
Yeah, I mean, you know, I don't like. You know, I panic when I start using more than 2 chords these days. I mean, occasionally a third one, but you know, I used to use like 15 chords or so. Right, Modern Life is Rubbish. I was using a lot of chords, heck of a lot of chords. You know, songs just changed every bar. I've just found myself gravitating to, in the music that I listen to and enjoy, to far simpler sort of expressive music. And I suppose, you know, you just go where your taste goes, don't you?
I thought that song was great until we put umpire on it. You know, it was quite a rough little song, really, and then it was umpired out of existence. So it turned into me something that thuggish, thoughtless people would be into rather than anyone who liked music. And the video did exactly the same. So I still hate it.
It's got 10 semitones in a row. That's why I'm proud of it.
I should have done something like that in it, so that would make me cheer up about it.
Yeah, I mean, it was just a very light-hearted. I mean, it's very considered and sort of contrived as a sort of there's a sort of songwriting device fest. You know, there's a narrative, and you know, it's got everything's there on it. You know, brass and it's just sort of heaped up. But you know, it just became this enormous albatross, really. You know, there was all the silliness that was going on at the time. Let's have a record war. You know, so it's tainted by that. But it is fascinating that Noel Gallagher does live in a big house in the country.
Well, it's only a bit of a stamp, really, because I didn't write that song. I wrote the lyrics and sang it, but because Damon... I was very fond of the backing track we created. It just reminded me a lot of good things, of some American good things, of some sort of light, that sort of rhythm that seemed very defunct. And
Banana.
yeah, and people were suddenly using it again, and we were one of the people who started using it again. But it took me a long time in my top room, listening to it and wondering whether I could do it. It was doing it live, really, that was the cause of concern for me. But I did want to, perversely, but I was just a little bit reticent, because I love singing, but I'm very careful not to. I don't like to spoil songs that I like by releasing them as singles, because I know inevitably I hate them after 6 months. Well, that's when we first thought about using guests, wasn't it?
Well, I don't know. Well, Damon was doing the voice originally. We wanted to get Phil Daniels to tell a story over the Debt Collector, which ended up being a weird waltz instrumental. But then when we'd sort of thought of Phil Daniels in it, it fitted perfectly for Park Life. I don't know. We've been watching Quadrophenia on the tour bus endlessly, and the Mike Leigh film that he's in. Meantime. So I think we just wanted him on the record. Like, where can we put him? Oh, we can do Park Life. Be great. But yeah, I mean, you know, it's a very odd song, really. It just sort of came out of nowhere. I mean, Damon presented it as fairly fully formed, really, and it instantly sounded like a hit to me.
Yeah, we kind of linked football with pop music very directly, and you know, I think that was probably the beginning of Britpop, like where it really kicked off. And it had started, and you know, and a lot of people were sort of claimed to start it, but that was where it really kicked off. That's where it all got out of hand.
When we made it, I mean, we were still a struggling indie band in danger of being dropped when we made that. So we were up against it, really. And we really put everything into
exactly. Modern Life is Rubbish sold 15,000 records in Britain, and Park Life sold, and 1.7 million or whatever, and was followed on by a lot of records that sold even more. But you know, before, you know, a gold record had been a platinum record had been an enormous achievement. A gold record was like, you've got a career, but this one went, you know, just took it out of there, and then, you know, it's just gone on. You know, you've had Oasis and then Travis, and I mean, I wonder how far it can go. You know, because it's just the same. It's just the audience has got bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. You know, by the time Travis were kind of selling a lot of records, something that had been started a long time ago had sort of, you know, to people, you know, who would never normally buy a record, but 5 years later thought, oh, I think I'll get a guitar record.
And that record really did change what mainstream pop sounded like. Sounds a bit pompous, but it did really. I mean.
Well, yeah, kind of from our angle, coming from our angle,
yeah,
you know.
So, yeah.
I've always felt that was a good song, actually, because of the reaction live to that song. It's always been a really great moment in any gig for me. I suppose it's just that it's the nature of the lyric, and it's quite melancholy, but it's sort of singing about. I suppose, you know, what we can sort of say is that, you know, we have in an obscure way, well, not that obscure, but obtuse way is a better word, charted a lot of trends in Britain over the 90s through those singles, and you know, a lot of them you could take as sort of classic examples of a period.
When they're doing the rock years, the 90s, playing the representative song from each year, I mean, they're gonna quids in.
It was really, you know, after the fallout of Britpop and the way that it developed into a very kind of bland experience, and the songs just got kind of sort of more, and I don't know, the bands got more sort of anodyne, and everything became lost its edge very quickly. I suppose it was, you know, it was quite an edgy record. Came in at a similar time as sort of someone like Radiohead was starting to really, you know, find their feet. You know, which was you know, it was just we were part of. We've always been in competition with ourselves. I felt, you know, it's sort of, you know, whenever we achieve something, we try and destroy it and see if we can, you know, we kind of get really annoyed of ourselves for having achieved it and try and do something completely different. However long you choose to stay in there, but while you're in that arena, then you know, I think you just, it's the only thing. I mean, what you know, I'm not interested in repeating myself. I don't think I'm interesting enough to repeat myself.
I mean, that was the kind of start of. Up until then, every time we put out something different, everyone goes, "Oh, blimey, it's completely different." And then we put out big people saying Blur have reinvented themselves, and then everybody started reinventing themselves. It was like, oh, if you're not reinventing yourself, you haven't arrived. So that was kind of, I don't know, it was kind of very different for us because it was quite a different way of doing things, way of making music and things. You know, we were really moving forward musically, but for everybody else, it's kind of quite a change in perception of Blur. I think, you know, no longer were we just being bloody arty and awkward by constantly doing and undoing things. We were kind of reinventing ourselves, and it was suddenly a positive thing to do rather than, you know.
I just think as we've got older, the music's got simpler and better played, and we've been able to play it with more feeling, you know.
Folks, I'd like to introduce Beetle Bum, which was one of the first things we recorded for the Blur album, and it's got a kind of groove.
We for the first time we could say, you know, if we wanted a 40-piece orchestra, they'd be there within an hour. that for a while was quite a, you know, I mean, I personally found it at the time quite, you know, it was exciting. But with hindsight, I think if you follow that route, you know, as a, you know, what we are essentially is people who should play together, you know, and that was kind of detracting. So I think it was good that we only kind of made one record with that sort of embellishment, you know. You know, I don't know how many central heating installments it promoted, but That's a bit obtuse, I know, but it was the first thing that we did that got taken.
It was
They do actually come round in one of those vans and collect the song from you and use it as well.
I do think the video we did at the time for that was a particularly good bit of work. It definitely has stood the test of time. It doesn't look dated.
Well, I remember it. We were kicking it around for ages, and we demoed it in a kind of calypso style, and it was this kind of swinging thing.
The Lilt Man.
Yeah, it was. It was totally tropical, and yeah, we were kidding. It was one of the magic studio moments when Damon suddenly picked out that little string motif. It was just studio magic moment.
I think with a bit of perspective on that record. I mean, for me, the reason that I was writing songs with those kind of subjects, it was at the birth of the lottery. It was if Part Life had been a sort of a romantic view of a ever decreasing Englishness replaced by an American model, then The Great Escape was really damning and kind of quite a pessimistic view of what happened to the country and what was going to happen, and all those lyrics on all those songs were about the sort of either me predicting my own downfall or the country's, what was happening with the country. And that song is about the lottery and about my kind of my feeling that it was a really bad thing, So I mean, that record is actually our darkest record, I think, by far, and a lot of the things that are sort of, that it deals with have become in a way sort of, totally part of the culture, In a way, it was quite a prophetic record.
We were in Barcelona and we had to do some B-sides inevitably. I mean, the amount of B-sides you have to record each album.
Well, Music for Radio was going to be the B-side for what was going to be the single. So a lot of our best work comes when we're not actually pressured.
Yeah, I think, that because you need to feel no pressure, So you I don't know, if there's B-sides, often good things do come out.
And we record the B-sides first, didn't we? Good. Before the album.
But that was the first thing we did for the for 13, No Distance. And I know that kind of captured the mood of the whole album, some or other. So that, I think we knew what direction we were going in after we had that. No, I mean, we recorded No Distance pretty much as it is. We just went and read it with posher guitars and amplifiers.
And finished lyrics. The original demo for that had a feeling. I mean, I do find a heck of a lot of stuff becomes self-fulfilling, and that was a kind of sort of at the beginning of a particularly bad period and was finished off at the end of a particularly bad period, and in between I didn't sort of go back to it and finish it off because I was in the middle of it. You've got to be very careful when you write songs. They kind of, if they've got magic, they tend to inflict it upon you. To make a video, it's a sort of, you always agree to these things. Yeah, no problem. Day off, 2 months' time, no problem. We'll make a video on that. By the time you get there, you don't want to do anything. You have no enthusiasm for it whatsoever. It's the last thing on the planet you want to do. We're in Barcelona.
It's all right though.
Hey,
the video. It's all right.
I don't seem to remember at the time you being very cooperative.
No, I was. I said I'm going to do this, and Sophie said that's fine, and I did it very well, hiding behind a wall.
Diving in a hole. I was just kind of wondering.
It was good, and you were doing your boxing.
It was basically
B-boy thing.
It looks quite nice bits of it.
I think it's all right.
It was on the site of an old power station near Barcelona, and they lined, obviously, what they line power stations with is asbestos, and everyone was going, it's all right, that asbestos is fine, the blue asbestos that's dangerous. And Ivan, I was talking about at the time, written down, this blue asbestos. And it was the whole site was completely covered. It's like a wide open
nice sunny
field.
day though,
and it was quite windy
day.
though as well. So
it was just clouds of asbestos blowing around. So,
but we've kind of got used with Sophie to that kind of condition. With song 2, it was like a whole afternoon of having shit through a big wind tunnel.
That was our idea, though, wasn't it?
It was our idea, but it was unpleasant, you know. We're kind of finally getting the hang of videos, and that, you know, you don't have to be in them. You know, I mean, the last one, no distance after wrong, we were asleep, which we liked. And I think the next one we're actually watching the video. We're watching the video. That's the video, is us watching.
I think we'd gone from, we'd gone from a Kinks group to being into Scott Walker, and I think the melancholic vibe kind of hit us quite heavily from listening to stuff like Scott Walker. I mean, who we'd kind of discovered a lot earlier, but thought was a little out of our reach, really, to sort of have to have an influence upon us. But suddenly, I think there was that song on a B-side, Young and Lovely, and which was a bit Scotty. I think it was a result of our musical, what we were listening to.
That was the first time we used a string section and backing vocals, so there was just a sort of a bit more ambition with production values, trying to make something that's altogether larger and more colourful and magnificent.
It didn't do that well, did it?
No, nor did What Difference Does It Make? It's all the bands that I
yeah,
really
but What
like.
Difference Does It Make wasn't a huge change for them.
It wasn't.
It's just the Smiths. No one really liked the Smiths in the first place. By the time, you know, Heaven Knows I'm Miserable Now, it's just a steady build-up, wasn't it, for them? But I mean, we instantly hit dizzy heights, and then sagged in the middle like a badly made cake.
Well, it's the effect we want when we're in the studio. You know, if we don't get that, it's just not happening. You know, we've got to go. I mean, when we were playing that is essentially a one-take track, and when we were playing it, we were just grinning and, you know, got that satanic look again, which is what you need. You know, that's what good pop music is about. That irrational sense of euphoria when you're playing it, and it's just the best thing in the world. You know.
Yeah.
Was it just fair?
We've only played it once.
I think it's a lot more. I think it's a lot more fun to listen to, because when, like you said, when you're in the midst of recording something, especially when we were all recording at the same time, we're so in amongst it, we can't quite really appreciate what is happening. We can only appreciate the vibe.
It's probably the biggest leap we made, because I feel it's like, you know, it's the first time we've sounded as good as we can sound musically when we're playing. You know, we sound like there's no production gone on in there really at all. That is how it was, you know. And I think if you can, you know, get to that point, you know, you're becoming half decent musicians, which is, I think, important. You know. I said that we've packed up everything from our one place into packing cases, and we're moving to a new premises now. Most definitely.
Yeah, I mean, we only finished that yesterday, so.
Unlikely to get a whole album full of songs that sound like that, but
No.
that kind of, what was great about that was the kind of freedom of it and the kind of anarchy of it.
And it's all on one chord. Even better, because you know, it's if you can get something that is powerful out of the simplest possible process, then you know you're getting somewhere in life.